Order. This is an open meeting. Posted over here, right around the corner as you walk in, is the actual Open Meeting Act. If you would, please stand, join us in a moment of silence, and as well, the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beth, if you'll do roll call.
Coy.
Here.
Lange.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Moaning.
Here.
Faust.
Here.
File.
Here.
All right. First, under action here, I would request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second.
A motion with a second to approve the consent agenda as provided you. Please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right, and as well, approval of the full agenda as provided you.
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
A motion with a second to approve the full agenda. Again, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right. I got too many papers in front of me here, Beth. Let's start with then the proclamation for April 26th as Arbor Day. Thanks. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Sue Fookman, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim April 26th, 2014 as Arbor Day in the City of Norfolk, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day by supporting efforts to protect trees and woodlands, by planting and caring for trees to gladden the heart and promote well-being of this and future generation, and participating in a tree planting opportunity on their property or in their neighborhood. I don't know that I see anyone here from the tree board. I know exactly where this can go, but I do believe, Pat, are you in here to verify for me that we're doing a tree planting here on?
Yes, we are. It's right outside.
Friday. Right at noon? Okay, be here at noon. Pat will hold off if it's any earlier than that. So he'll make sure that, like I say, it's going on, and you're invited to come share in that as well. So next, we have a proclamation for Buddy Poppy Day. Whereas the annual sale of Buddy Poppies by the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW of the United States, has been officially recognized and endorsed by governmental leaders since 1922. And whereas VFW Buddy Poppies are assembled by disabled veterans, the proceeds for this worthy fundraising campaign are used exclusively for the benefit of disabled and needy veterans and the widows and the orphans of deceased veterans. And whereas the basic purpose of the annual sale of Buddy Poppies by the VFW is eloquently reflected in the desire to honor the dead by helping the living. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Sue Fookman, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2014 as Buddy Poppy Day in the City of Norfolk, Nebraska and the surrounding area. And I urge all citizens to recognize the merits of this cause by contributing generously to its support through your donations for Buddy Poppies on the day set aside for the distribution of these symbols of appreciation for the sacrifices of our honored dead. I urge all patriotic citizens to wear a Buddy Poppy as mute evidence of our gratitude to the men and the women of this country who have risked their lives in defense of the freedoms which we continue to enjoy as American citizens. And with that, I believe we do have someone here that will accept this proclamation. Come on forward, Doris. I'll come over there. I'll present this to you. You certainly like to talk about where you will be planning. Sending those copies. So,
We'll be distributing copies throughout the city from early morning until 1 o'clock on April 26th. All proceeds from this will go to help our veterans here in North Nebraska. The copies themselves are not made in Norfolk because they're made in around Kansas City and that area for the homeless veterans that come in and are paid so much to do it. And with these proceeds, these will be strictly used for Norfolk, Nebraska in helping with our funerals that we do, helping with gas for those that need to go to Omaha for to the doctor, and then 3/4 of it goes to our own veterans out here at the base.
where do you plan to where do you sell at?
Oh,
All over pretty much?
Louis Thrifty Way, Old Time Bees, Bombard, Walmart, Walgreens, downtown areas,
Right. Certainly, you got plenty of choices to get from, so.
and they'll all be marked so that you know that they are very safe.
Doris, thanks very much.
You get,
Okay. Next, I really think we should have saved this to last, but tonight is Citizens Academy recognition to the, what is it? Where is she, Diane? How many do we have? 17. Well, I tell you what, why don't you help me here, and we'll go through the presentation. Maybe it would be beneficial if you'd give a little, I'm sorry?
To explain the program, what
Please.
we've done?
Yeah?
Okay, I'd love
Thank
to. I'm Diane Becker, and this is what these 17 committed citizens were given on their first session, and this was 8 weeks ago. So they have been, talk about committed, 8 weeks in a row. They have come every Tuesday night in rain and snow and sleet and lots of bad weather, I tell you. But just to give you an idea of some of the topics they've covered. To start, just to remind you, this all started as an idea. I had talked to Shane and Sue about this, and they are all in for getting citizens to know more about our super city government and just informing people. That's a very big goal of Sue's and Shane's. So this is something that we came upon on the internet that other communities are doing, and it's a Citizens Academy. So we called this Norfolk 101 Citizens Academy and asked for people to sign up, and that's how we got these 17. On the first night, we had Sue and Shane, and then we had the city clerk and the finance officers, human research director. The second night, we did Norfolk Public Library and Information Technology. The third week, we did the Fire and Police Division, and they think that I had planned it, but I didn't. We had a fire call right when we were in the fire station, so they got to see the whole thing, the firemen get on their stuff and go, so that was pretty exciting. Saw a taser at the police division. That was exciting. Then we went out to the water division, very interesting, and Dennis talked about Dennis Smith talked about city planning, which a lot of folks did not know about. Also, Trent Howard talked about codes, very informative at the police station. On this session 5, we had Norfolk Housing. We met at the Kensington, got a tour of the Kensington, and had a talk with Candace and Candace about the Norfolk Economic Development Council. That was interesting. Then the 6th night, we were out to the wastewater treatment plant, and by the time we had really good weather that night, so that worked out good. We toured that whole plant, and then we also had Rob Mercer talk to us about the transfer station and the landfill, and we went to the household hazardous waste building. So learned a lot that night. And then last week was the last night that we had, besides tonight, was Parks and Streets. And so we met out at the Elkhorn Cabin, and talked about all the different projects going on with trails and everything. And then we went to the parks, the street division downtown, and those snowplows and all that stuff. So then tonight, then is the final night, so they got to talk to some of you, which I really appreciate. Those they asked questions of what it's like to be a city council member, what are the different roles. So I really appreciate that. So with that, I guess we'll let Sue give them a little certificate of for their graduation.
Hey, Diane, we have a special presentation tonight, too. You can choose one of your students, and the police have graciously offered to show you that taser live in action if you want to.
And I'll tell you why he's passing that along. Originally, it was supposed to be the councilman with the most seniority.
Oh.
Not right, Dave?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just let you, they've got their little name tags on, so I'll let you read them off. If they could just stand up along there, right?
So I'll have my back to you, but you folks, you get to stand right here in front of this group of officials. So with that, Jim Brennan, first on my list for the successful completion of Norfolk 101 Citizens Academy. Mr. Brennan. Okay. And next, Mike Rahota. Mr. Mike. Thank you, sir. For taking your time. Thank you. Appreciate it. Dwayne Goff. Pretty sophisticated group of folks here, isn't it?
We think so.
Paul Hughes. You're not back there at the table tonight, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you. You bet. Was it all worth it?
It
A
sure
newbie
was. It was
to the
awesome.
community.
Absolutely.
Good. Becky Maggart. Dave Baggart. David. Miss Diane is very official. Thank you. A lot of time given. Christian O. I told you guys that Christian was teaching me this morning. We were at a common meeting, and he started filling me in on things I didn't know that he had learned. So, great. Thank you. Clary Prim. Thanks very much for your time, too. Appreciate it. And Sherry Prim. Since every certificate remains the same, thanks for your time for this year. Diana Rizzo. Thank you, and she told me she's going to be the first Shane to grab hold of you. You'll be spending a couple hours with her first. So, Pete Rizzo. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You bet. John Schmidt. Tom Scaff. Steve Sullivan. Jamie Wickman. Scott Williams. Thanks, Scott. And last at the alphabet, Mr. Dwayne Wolf. Okay, and with that, here is the first group completed, what is it? Norfolk 101. Thank you, Scott. You all know your city administrator willingly accepted the challenge to spend 2 hours with each one of these folks at whatever it is that they choose to take him to and allow him to be a part of a piece of their day. So willingly was he tonight. So
Within reason. Well, whatever, I mean, whatever's a big word.
You're going to take him, who said you're going to go first, right, Diana? She said, yep.
Absolutely.
She's gonna take you first, so.
Great.
Yeah, keep telling our city administrator we need him outside the walls a little bit of the city building, so this group is challenged to make sure that happens. So, thanks all. I hope you'll stick around for the rest of the meeting. I promise you will be short, but it'll be very interesting. So, I think you'll, there's a couple more items that are going to be discussed a little bit that I think are very pertinent about what's going on in your community. So, I encourage you to give us at least another 30 minutes of your time would be great, and then we'll break it into this. So, thanks again. And Diane Becker, if I could, I think you deserve a round of applause for all the effort you put into this. I'm thinking, are you doing this again soon?
Yes, because I already have a list of people who want to be in this.
Very good.
So
All right.
anybody who's interested, they need to contact me because we'll be first come, first served.
And what do you allow, 20? 18, 20? Okay, very good. Thanks to certainly all the city staff that were a part of making it successful too. So a lot of time, effort, but very valuable. So we're going to move on. The next under a special presentation here is the Covey case. And is that you, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor and Council, sometimes in life we get opportunities to talk about decisions that are made that really affect the morale and the integrity of the community and of our employees. And this particular case is one of those opportunities that sometimes, maybe you've been involved in this as individually, but sometimes in the insurance world, once something bad happens, either in a car accident or an injury or something like that, sometimes the insurance companies will oftentimes they take that role and opportunity to look at the facts, and then they start to make the decisions, oftentimes financially only, with the financial considerations being their bottom line as far as of settling cases and making cases go away, for lack of better words. And that's just the nature of the beast, because insurance companies are in the financial industry as well, and they need to be profitable, and they need to make money, and they need to defend their clients. But sometimes they need to take the shortest route to a settlement. This particular case was not that, fortunately. We had a citizen that wrongly accused our police officers in the performance of their duties as being police officers. This person sued the city of Norfolk, and our insurance company took a different route with this particular case, and they decided to look at the facts and defend, and that's an important thing. So we wanted to take the opportunity to really to have the police officers and the firefighters and the public safety guys speak firsthand about what it means to them on the street, having their integrity defended. Because trust me, out on the streets in our little town, they got a hard job in the public safety world, and there's hard decisions to be made every single day, every single night, and they have to rely on their training and their professionalism, and they do every moment of every decision that they're making out there, and they did in this particular case. And we were successfully defended, and we were successfully defended with some expense involved, but at the end of the day, we were successfully defended, and I've said that 3 times, because their integrity was in question and remains intact today, and that allows them as public safety officials to do the job that they're doing. So with that being said, you've heard enough from the city administrator, and I'd like to bring up the chief officers and their personnel just to share a little bit of what that means to them as public safety providers.
And I get to ask you gentlemen to please state your name.
Show you our license too, if you'd like.
All right. I believe you.
Mayor and members of the council, I'm Bill Meisner, the police chief here in Norfolk, and with me I have Sergeant Chad Ryman. in the back, I also have a couple of other officers there. These are the 3 officers who were the subject of the lawsuit, and I asked them to be here tonight. And Sergeant Ryman is going to share just a little bit from a personal perspective as far as what it's like to be kind of in that position. I just want to speak just in some general terms about this. When officers go out and they handle calls, they never know what they're going to encounter. It can be the same type of call day after day after day, but they never know for sure exactly how it's going to turn out because of that human element that's involved in it. And they can handle the same call, but it may have a different outcome, or they may have to do something just a little bit different each time to handle that. And usually, they feel that when it's all said and done and they've cleared the call, it's done, it's over, they've handled it. They do the reports and then they move on. In this particular case, they did that. They got a complaint, they responded to the call. They handled the call as they had been trained to do, following our policies and procedures. Their primary concern was the well-being of the community and the well-being of this particular woman. They were concerned for her safety. They took her to the hospital. They assisted hospital personnel in examining her to make sure that there weren't any medical issues that needed to be taken care of. They provided the security. I will say she wasn't a willing participant, and so that was the reason why they had to be there. When it was all said and done, they did the reports and they thought it was done. A year later, they were served notice that they were being sued. And the city was being sued, and each of the officers was being sued individually. Now, I will tell you that when you receive a notice like that, if you have not, it certainly gets your attention, and it really gets your nerves to kind of on edge a little bit, because you don't know now what's going to happen, and you're turning this over now to your insurance folks, and that's exactly what happened. We worked with them to provide them with the information. They took that information and they did what they would do. Now, the one point that I would like to make is that during the course of this process, the plaintiff and her attorney, they did make an offer to settle this particular case for a fairly healthy sum of money. And our insurance folks just said no. I mean, there was no negotiating, there was no counter offer, nothing like that. They've reviewed the case, they had reached their own conclusions about it, and they said, no, we'll see you in court. They put together their case. The defense attorney presented his motion to dismiss. The court reviewed it, and the court agreed with what he presented. The court agreed with the actions. They were proper and just, and so they dismissed the charges and said that the officers had done nothing wrong, that they had handled it just as they should have. And that provides a huge sense of relief. In preparing for this tonight, I talked to many of the officers in the division, and to a person, they expressed how pleasant it was, how good it felt, that when they believed the officers had done nothing wrong, that they had done what they had been trained to do, that they had had the best interest of this individual in mind, that when this person turned around and sued them, it was a great feeling to know that it wasn't bargained away, that they felt like the city, the insurance company, stood behind them and believed in their actions and were willing to take it to court. And the result, I think, speaks for itself. The charges or the allegations were dismissed, and there was no wrongdoing found. And that's a good feeling. They don't want to have someone negotiate when they're talking about their own personal reputation individually as an officer, as well as our reputation as an agency, when they know that they've done nothing wrong and they believe that they have acted appropriately, and they have done what they have been trained and paid to do. And when they are backed up in those certain circumstances, that's just an overwhelming feeling of support there. And they all appreciated it, and I will tell you, that's what they expect. They understand when they make a mistake, all right, you deal with it, they'll own up to it, and whatever happens, happens. But when they get it right, they do the job right, their expectation is that they will be supported and they will be backed. And they feel that this community, this council, and the insurance company did exactly that. They backed them up, supported them, and the court agreed that their actions had been proper. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Ryman and just let him talk about it from more of a personal standpoint as being one of the individuals who was involved in the suit.
Thank you. I think Chief summed it up pretty well. In January of 2012, myself and Officer Teets and Officer Witzel responded to a call. There was a female subject. She was in crisis, and we did the best that we could to help her through that. We did exactly what we should have done and exactly what anybody else in our position would have done to try to take care of her and the community, because she was a danger to herself and the community as a whole. We got her the help that she needed. While we were at the hospital, her medical condition took a turn for the worst, and it was a good thing that she was at the hospital. She evidently didn't appreciate all of what happened, and a year later, or a little less than a year later, we were served papers that we were being sued by this lady. Our names were plastered in at least the Lincoln newspaper with some not so nice things that were said about us and allegations that were made against us. Obviously, doesn't make a person feel good when you read those things, especially when you knew you were doing everything you could to help that individual. Early on in the litigation, I think we expressed our concerns about settling for something like that. I think that, at least it's my understanding, the insurance people took that to heart and worked for us in that regard. Early on, we had a minor issue with our counsel. They were very responsive to that. They immediately checked on that issue and made sure everything was going okay. Special thanks to Clint Shukai and the City Attorney's Office, Jeannie Kester. They were on top of it day in and day out, checking court records and making sure that everything that needed to be done on our behalf was being done, which was a great relief to us to know that we had a person that was looking out for our interests right here at home, as opposed to somebody in a legal office that doesn't even reside within the city of North Fork. So that was a very nice thing to have, and again, a special thanks to the City Attorney's Office. Again, I'll kind of repeat what the Chief said. It gives you a feeling of vindication. The officers all, I've not talked to any of the officers that feel any different. When your name is slandered, if you will, it's good to have that end result saying that you've done nothing wrong. It ended in a summary judgment, which basically means the judge looked at it and the person that brought the case had absolutely no standing whatsoever. So that was very nice. In the end, again, we were vindicated, and thankfully so. We also understand from a business perspective, there is a cost versus benefit analysis that insurance companies take on, and I think in this situation they made a good decision. And I think that's a common feeling, at least amongst the personnel at the police division. So, anyway.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming forward and talking about it. I know it's never one of those easy situations to try to relive and share with a group like this, but I do feel it is important, and certainly, you know, I think I've had the opportunity just in the last month or so to be introduced to some of our new police officers coming on, and you know, I got to tell you, I look at them and sometimes I wonder, why is it that you make such a commitment to a community and be ready to stand forward and get yourself or allow yourself to be put in those kind of situations. But I believe I speak for this entire council when I say thank you for what it is you're doing, as well as this entire community. So job well done. Thanks for being before us. Scott, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I wasn't sure if you wanted to.
Oh.
Just briefly, my name is Scott Cordes, and I am the fire chief here in Norfolk. Proud to serve this community and proud to defend the honor of the men and women that work for the fire division. We see people at their most vulnerable place in life. They're often experiencing their worst day, and their property is also vulnerable in the opportunities we respond to those fire and medical emergencies. And so they deserve and we need to deliver the utmost respect and professionalism, integrity in taking care of their property and those individuals. But we live in a society where, in spite of the amazing abundance of great people, we're one call away every time from a wrongful allegation in those vulnerable conditions. And part of my job is to defend the honor and integrity of my men and women that work for me. And I need, likewise, that layer of protection to occur by this body and by the city administration, and it feels good to know that you have it. It feels good to know that that is there for you, and that the integrity of these fine men and women are being taken care of as they should be. So I support and respect and appreciate what happened to our brothers and sisters over at the police division. I'm glad that that outcome was successful, and I'm glad that they got the respect and defense that they deserve. So Captain Ludd is with me today from C-Shift. Lyle, I don't know if there's anything additional you'd like to say.
I can if you want me to.
Please if you like.
Good evening, my name's Lyle Lutt. 2 points about this deal that I don't know the details about it, wasn't really involved with it too much, but I do some real estate, or used to do some rental stuff on my off-duty days. First point is, it seems that anytime something's broke, there's always two fixes. A cheap, easy, quick way to do it that over the long run ends up being take more time, take more money. Or you can do it right the first time and be done with it for forever. It seems to me, from what I've heard, that the cheap fix would have been to pay him off, and that would have fixed it. That would have been it for this project. But when you think of the long term, does that really fix it for the long term, or does it open up more doors further down the road for additional stuff like that to happen? I don't know. I personally, I think that it was handled the right way. Again, I don't know all the details. The second point is, nobody wants to work for very long for a place that doesn't support them. Every day, those guys and us go into people's houses or apartments, and there's money on the counter, jewels. The opportunity to do wrong is always there. It's always present. And we are there frequently in the back of an ambulance with somebody by ourselves. 2 people on the ambulance, going to the hospital, 1 person be driving, 1 person will be in the back. I have never, I've been here 15 years, seen anybody do anything to damage the integrity, the intestinal fortitude of sneaking something in their pocket, taking advantage of somebody in the back of the ambulance. And I've had such a positive experience with the police department. I was just working with these guys less than an hour ago, that if they tell me that this is how it happened, I'm going to believe them. Nobody wants to be guilty until proven innocent. So because of that, because of this decision, I feel so much more confident, have so much more encouragement going forth in my job, that I don't have to look over my shoulder or take extra people on small calls that maybe don't need to be there other for witnessing purposes. That I'm very glad it happened this way. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have about it.
Any questions at all?
All right, thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate you being forward here, guys. And again, our sincere thanks to Scott, you and your group as well. So thanks for being here tonight. Okay. I'd like to take us on a little different route now. We're going to have city staff update us on SID number 1, Stanton County. So Woodland Park sewer issues, is that you too?
It is, Mayor.
You really have,
we have a quarterly update in your packet that was, we received from Friday from Woodland Park, from their engineer, Mr. Bryan. You can read that. It's also available outside. It's in your packet. So what the quarterly update is, as you know, we've been doing those for a while. As you see your quarterly update, it kind of shows what transpired from Woodland Park's viewpoint since January. It gives a synopsis of the processes that they have in action. It also sets kind of the framework for where we go forward, in my mind. As you also know, the mayor and the subcommittee has sent a letter to Woodland Park outlining the minimum requirements necessary for Woodland Park to consider staying on with our sewer system. That's important to note. We haven't had a response back yet from Woodland Park. Tonight, further action is a memorandum of understanding. Action item number 28 in your regular agenda is a memorandum of understanding. This memorandum of understanding is going to authorize, if approved, the council will authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding in the event that Woodland Park decides to go with staying connected to the city of Norfolk sewer system. They really have two options. It's either stay connected with us and meet the minimum requirements set forth through the subcommittee and the memorandum of understanding before you tonight, or to go on their own and develop their own sewer plant. I'll be honest with you, I'm a little frustrated at times with the process because there's been a lot of good communication with Woodland Park, with their board members. I think maybe all of the elected officials from time to time have had one-on-one individual communication. I know we've had some communication between subcommittees and their subcommittees, and I've had some personal interaction with some of their board members as well, and it's always been positive. I mean, the communication has been positive, but my frustration level is coming to a point where we have to act, or they have to act. And why I say that is because really it's pretty simple. It's either yes or no. I mean, it's either yes, we're going to stay on with the city of Norfolk sewer system and meet the minimum requirements that are set forth in the memorandum of understanding tonight before you, or no, we're going to go on our own and build our own sewer system. I mean, I know it's not an easy decision because there's financial considerations on both options, but from the city of Norfolk standpoint, at least when I look at the whole situation, it's pretty easy. They either have to say yes or no, and they have to say it soon. DEQ gave them a deadline of May 1st to choose one of the two. They have since relented a bit and moved that deadline to July 1st. This is Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. That doesn't mean the city of Norfolk has to do that. I can tell you this, as you know, I go to a lot of meetings with a lot of people trying to develop our community as well as the elected officials do as well. And in part, this decision or lack of decision that's going on with Woodland Park and whether they're going to embrace our sewer system or not is affecting what we can do as a community. Our eastern border, everything east of the flood control is we can't continue to do what we need to do to grow. We have residential properties that are on hold because of this situation. We have an engineering study that's on hold, basically, waiting for information, waiting to understand whether we count Woodland Park or we don't count Woodland Park. That's why I say it's yes or no. Either we count their capacity or we don't count their capacity. I don't care either way necessarily, as long as they meet the minimum requirements. Personally, as your city administrator, I don't care. I just want them to make a decision, because we have to move forward, and we can't move forward because we're held accountable and to the same standards every community in the state of Nebraska is through the DEQ process. When we decide we're going to expand our sewer system or we're going to bring more users onto our system, we have to prove, oftentimes, we have to prove that we have the capacity to do that. And that's the situation we're in now. We have to prove we have the capacity to do that, and we can't make that decision without knowing, is Woodland Park in or are they out? So you can probably tell I'm a little frustrated, Mayor and Council, by that, because we have to know. So I would encourage you tonight to consider the memorandum of understanding that's before you. It allows the mayor to sign it in the event that Woodland Park decides that they are going to stay with the city of Norfolk. I encourage you to authorize her to do that tonight. And I also encourage you to set the tone in a positive way as a partner with Woodland Park, that they have to make a decision. The memorandum of understanding says May 1st. I think that could easily be changed to May 6th. That allows their meeting, their meetings are concurrent with ours, so they're meeting right now. They'll be meeting again the first Monday in May, so May 6th would allow them to have another additional meeting to consider the memorandum of understanding and the minimum requirements and the two options in front of them. And then let us know. I would encourage us to, in a positive way, set that tone to them and say, listen, we have to know what your decision is, because we, again, are being held accountable for that. We have Tejas Tubular, all of their sewer comes to this lift station. Anyone that we add to the northeast comes to this lift station. Any housing projects or commercial projects we do east of the flood control, for the most part, come to this lift station. This lift station also provides that capacity to Woodland Park. So for us to do our due diligence, we have to know what those numbers are. So the time to wait is no more in my mind. And I'd encourage the council to consider that, and consider it strongly, because we're kind of in a pressure cooker. We gotta grow our community. We gotta get some houses put on the rolls here and make available to the fine folks that are gonna work at our newly found friends at Tejas Tubular. We gotta expand and have capacity for Tejas Tubular and other industrial partners in that northeast sector. We have to make those decisions sooner than later. Waiting till June 16th and then throwing our hands up in the air is not, June of 2016 is not going to be a long-term solution for this community. It's 2 years away from now. We cannot afford to wait that long. All we simply need to know, I think what the mayor and subcommittee put in front of the SID board members is fair, it's honest, it's the minimum requirements. I would hope the whole council embraces that tonight, but it's fair. It's a fair offer. I think the elected officials have done well with that offer. And it allows Woodland Park to stay with us and us to continue or to rebuild that relationship that we want to have with them. That's the long-term goal. But we can't do it, we can't wait anymore and jeopardize the rest of our sewer system and the rest of our sewer rate payers' ability to grow our community, because that's really their expectations of you and of city staff and of this community in general. So with that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability, or the rest of the staff here has been engaged in this for a number of years, as you know. So that's the situation.
So, does anyone have any questions on the update that's been provided you?
Shane, I have one question. In this memorandum, will anything change with our citizens that are on the low end of this sewer pipe that have had problems in the past?
Our citizens?
Our citizens?
Norfolk citizens?
Do you feel they will be protected?
Absolutely. If they fought, yeah, I mean, I think, I shouldn't say absolutely, nothing's absolute, but with the 7 requirements that were put forth in front of them from the subcommittee and the mayor, there's one of the requirements is an engineered solution to the capacity issue. And that basically, in a nutshell, is make the system accommodate only so much flow, a flow that's designated by engineering staff, their engineering staff, and DEQ's engineering staff in agreement with that, and have basically a pipe that only allows so much flow through there. That restriction, for lack of better words, protects, for the best of our ability, protects those citizens that have been flooded twice with sewer. And I'll read you something that DEQ sent to their engineers. It says, we encourage the SID in Norfolk to quickly resolve your issues. The season for heavy thunderstorms is upon us, and all efforts should be made to prevent sanitary sewer overflows and backups. That was on April 15th. That letter was sent to Woodland Park's engineers. So that, it's a great point, Councilman. That whole situation, I know it's been dry, but the whole situation is out there yet. We don't know. I mean, it could affect them. If we don't get the engineered solution in place, then the potential for them to be affected is increased.
Thank you.
I guess just to explain a little bit, if you can visualize an hourglass, how an hourglass works, it only lets so much sand through at a regulated pace. That's what this engineered solution would do. It would create, for lack of better words, a restriction so that only so much water would go through at any particular time.
And that's a great point. That's exactly right. And that capacity it isn't like the city of Norfolk, through this memorandum of understanding, is squeezing down Woodland Park. It's an agreed upon amount for what their engineers think that their normal needs are. I think it's 300 gallons per minute, Dennis?
That's very
Peak
close,
factor.
in the ballpark.
Right around 300 gallons per minute. Their average flows, I was just at Woodland Park's meeting 2 weeks ago. You know, we monitor their average flows. I think their average flows are somewhere around 100 gallons a minute, sometimes less, sometimes a bit more. But it's in the engineered solution, really gives them the capacity to grow and to meet their needs. It isn't a restriction that is draconian by any means. So,
Dennis, that's peak flow, and that's determined by a national standard for communities that size. Am I correct?
Yes, what we would base the flow on is that you take the population that's being served, and Norfolk and DEQ have agreed that average per capita per day sewer flow is about 75 gallons per minute. That's an agreed upon number. It's very close to what Norfolk's is. We're just slightly less than that number, but it's a good number. And then DEQ's standards for doing design has a peaking factor that is based on population. And it's based on the square root of the population. It gives you a number, and the peaking factor is about 3.6, 3.7 in that range for a community the size of Woodland Park. So you take their population times 75 times that peaking factor, and you're going to come up with very close to 300 gallons per minute. So that's where that number comes from. It should be, your system should be designed to handle that. There's solutions for them if they're getting more than that into their system to build some type of a, calling it a surge tank, or just a device to collect that water and then send it to us after the storm's over. And in the meantime, they need to continue to work on their system and find their issues, and they're doing some of that. But I'm not comfortable that they're going to find their solutions. Therefore, we need the non-adjustable engineered solution that says, we're going to take this much, we'll plan for it, we'll develop a system that will handle that. It should hopefully solve the issues of the downstream folks. And if it doesn't, we got to go find the problems in our own system. And Dennis Watts will tell you that that's a never-ending process. We're there day in, day out, year in, year out. We discovered some issues about 4 years ago that were created in 1975. So they come and raise their head, you deal with them and solve them, and away you go.
Councilman Murin, you bring up a good point. We want to make sure that our citizens are
are protected, first and foremost. But item F in this MOU calls for a surge tank to be put in too, which also protects the citizens of Woodland Park. So everybody has to come out a winner on this thing. And so it's important for them to realize that they're protected as well.
That's a great point. The surge tank is just that. I mean, it is a protection device for Woodland Park residents. You know, if there's a large, like Dennis said, I mean, every sewer system, you have to continually update it and continually maintain it. So if there's ever a fracture in their system again, because they're doing better. I mean, they're working on their system, but if there's a fracture 10, 15 years from now, and they get a bunch of inflow into their system, then that surge tank is in between them and sewer in their basements. So it's a wise decision, and it's something that DEQ suggested early on in this process with us and with them.
Okay.
I got one.
Sure.
This is for Dennis. Dennis, it's fairly common to use 75 gallons per capita per day. Is that fairly, I mean, you said the DEQ and City of Norfolk both agreed on that as a...
Yes. Woodland Park's initial review of their information, they came up with 50 gallon per minute, or 50 gallon per capita per day. My experience looking at our flow for our 20-some thousand citizens would say that number was too low. DEQ, in their response back to Woodland Park, asked them to look at some more data that they had available to them that they had discounted the first time through. They came back and came to that 75 gallon per capita per person per day. So that's why I say we're all agreeing, at least the city and DEQ are agreeing on the 75 gallon per capita per day. And I think that Woodland Park is now because they put it into their thing. So got a standard is what they need to be developing their system to or hit. So
the reason I bring that up is I'm just a little concerned about this. You know, we want to get this moving, get this ball rolling, but if their consulting firm isn't a little behind here, because maybe I'm reading this wrong, but that the progress report we received states they were on March 12th, 2014, they talked about 75 gallons per capita. Shouldn't they, now maybe I'm wrong, Dennis, maybe this design process is way further ahead of this, but if they're just introducing that thought process then, does that mean we're going to be waiting a while for their engineering study to be completed and we could talk about, you know? So
that's the whole frustration in this process. If you look back, I actually gave to their engineer, based on some subcommittee work, at that point in time, I think it was 5 items in there, but basically it was the same parameters that we're looking at now as to what it would take for them if they wanted to continue to be connected to the City of Norfolk sewer system. To the best of my knowledge, they still have not accepted those and have moved forward. And there were some general things. It says complete the facilities plan. Well, they're still working on their facilities plan, but the part that was important to the City of Norfolk was agreeing on what that flow rate was going to be. Yes. How they're going to handle the internal side of that, they can still continue to be working on that while we're working on an agreement. I kind of look at this agreement as a 2-part system. One, we need a skeleton as to this is what the agreement or the broad-based terms of those are going to be, and then we're going to need to put some meat and potatoes on that skeleton on that final agreement. What we need right now is that skeleton approved. And that's the thing that we're saying. We need Woodland Park. Either you tell us that this skeleton is going to work, you know, and it should be by May 1. I appreciate the May 6th date that Shane suggested, but we need to know that now so that we have time to add the meat and potatoes in the next 45 days or 60 days after that to comply with DEQ's timeline. We also need that to be able to move forward with our lift station. Do I put 0 in there? Do I put 300 in there? Do I put some other number in there? And I don't think it should be any other number than 0 or 300. But we need that to move forward. You know, I was a little disappointed in DEQ that that wasn't one of the components that they asked of Woodland Park before they extended the May 1st to the July 1st deadline. But they didn't, and that's water under the bridge, and we'll work through it. So
Yes, we will. Any other questions or thoughts or concerns? Okay. What I'd like to do then, if we could, guys, is just skip to item 28 and take action on consideration then of approval of a memorandum of understanding between the city and the Sanitary Improvement District Number 1 of Stanton County, allowing SID to reconnect to the city sewer system so long as certain minimum requirements are set. If I
I'll
could
make
have-
the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Any further discussion at all?
I think it's important that people realize we are a community and we're working as a community, as Woodland Park being part of this community. And when I asked Dennis that question about the flow rates, what I'm getting at is I don't believe our staff or the DEQ are trying to be unrealistic in what they're asking for flow rates, you know, and so it's important to, as a community moving forward, that nobody's trying to, you know, put one on top of the other or whatnot, so, and that's why I asked the question, Dennis, and I appreciate your answer, thanks.
On this item, okay. Any other comments or?
Mayor, also, just to be clear, I guess I would offer up your consideration. Can we, to consider to send them a specific date that either yes or no? I mean, I can't say it any more simpler than that. I'd really want to have a date, a yes or no, and I want to have it soon. I mean, I would encourage you to ask that question because we have to know the answer soon.
I think Dennis Smith has certainly made that point strong to us. And again, it's all about this community, our responsibility to move forward. So that being said, you made the motion, Dale? Or you did?
I did.
Do you choose to add the suggested date of your city administrator for this memorandum of understanding to be agreed upon?
I would.
Okay, and the second was?
I had the second. What date are we going to go with?
We're going May 1st? Or
May
May
1st and
6th?
second, or 6th, excuse me. 6th gives them another opportunity to meet because they won't meet
Well,
again.
then I'll say May the 6th for the motion.
Okay,
And I'm okay with that. I was going to suggest the 7th because they'll meet on the 6th.
Yeah, good point. May the 7th it is.
Sure.
all right, so the motion is been made with May the 7th as the date. There was a second made. Dale, you're
Second.
okay with that second? All right. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Okay, we're going to back up then to item 27, consideration of approval to accept the low bid of $19,692.90 from Top Coat Incorporated, Yankton, South Dakota, for armor coat projects at Skyview Park, at Skyview Park and Tahazuka Park, and for the addition of $53,689.56 for street work not originally bid on Norfolk Avenue, for a total project cost of $73,382.46. And it looks like Mr. Miller is here to give a little bit of an explanation as to...
You described it very well.
I read it. Not very well, but...
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, we originally bid this project. We had some park work that we wanted done, and then we also had some street work that we wanted to do. We got the bids back. When we got the bids back, then we also kind of just started the discussion with you folks about some gap paving issues that were going to be out there. During that same time also, we had a great suggestion from Dennis about Norfolk Avenue's overlay from 18th Street to 27th Street, that if we would armor coat that perhaps that would help extend the life of that overlay project that was out there. So we kind of got together, you guys are working on some gap paving things, and said, let's take out the street issues that we had originally bid in there. Let's take that pricing that they have bid to us, and let's apply that money to Norfolk Avenue and armor coat the overlay portion of Norfolk Avenue from 18th to 27th Street. So the addition wasn't originally bid, but we used their bid price, which they were the low bid on, and they're okay with us deleting the original projects and adding in the Norfolk Avenue projects. So that's why there's such a large addition there. So, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Does that make sense, everybody? Good with that?
So the square foot price stayed the same?
Correct.
They're just doing an extensive more of a project?
Yep. we cut out what we originally bid in the street portion, and then we added another piece back in there.
Can you explain the Armacoat process, just so people understand what we're talking about up here?
It's thick, gooey oil and gravel. A lot of the small towns do it in lieu of some paving, those types of things. It's worked pretty well. You know, we've done a few streets around. We did a lot of work in the park up at Skyview. We've got a little work to do out on those gravel roads that have a nice hard base. It seems to work pretty well. We're kind of trying it. We're pretty new to it. So we just, a couple years ago, that came up as a suggestion up through the ranks to maybe try this on some of the low traffic gravel streets in the park. We had a lot of, particularly at Skyview, we get a lot of complaints, or had a lot of complaints about dust, washboarding, those kind of things. And so it really, for us, it was actually a real cost savings, because for the maintenance time versus the cost of doing it, it was a real plus for us up there. So we've got lots of compliments from the neighbors. They like it. We've got lots of compliments from people that are using the park. They don't have a gravel road to drive through in case it's a little wet or damp. Pat has done the parking lots that are up there, so same thing. Moms and kids and strollers can get out there, don't have to drive around the mud puddles and those type of things. So it seems like it's worked pretty well in those areas.
Gary, is that process something that city employees can do with given equipment, or is that something you do have to contract out?
No, it's specialized equipment. They're very good at it. We would not want to try to replicate them doing it. So.
And is there a minimum amount of square footage, or a length of a street, or something that they have to look at?
No, I don't think so. I think you know, you're probably getting you want to do a fair piece of work to get their best pricing, those kind of things. Sure. Last year we had a different company doing it. This year a different company kind of underbid them. So I think it's pretty competitive out there. One of the things, of course, the price is a little dependent. It's oil, you know, so it's price dependent, of course, on the oil market too. And other than that, it's just very fine gravel. So we think it'll do a nice job on Norfolk Avenue, sealing up that overlay that has developed some cracking in it, that has some relatively large cracks in it. It was a great suggestion. And again, it's worked pretty well for us where we've used it in the past.
So you know the cost differential between concrete and Armacoat off the top of your head?
A lot.
Well, I figured it'd be a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
I mean, is it 60%,
Good answer, Mr.
80%?
Miller.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, you're talking two completely different types of paving. I mean, you know, this really is better than a gravel street, probably, but it's completely different than a concrete paved street. So, I mean, I would hate to tell you the cost differential, because they're really kind of apples and oranges. They maybe get to the same effect, but, you know, long term, they're completely different.
Okay.
So,
fair enough. Thank you.
Yep.
Gary, how does our CHAF funds come into this then to help pay for it?
Well, originally, we would have paid for this, most of this out of the street division. The street division budget's about $90,000 for concrete work that we do in town. I was going to take the portion of that, the bid tallies in your packet. We would have been able to pay for the most of the street division work out of the street division budget. So the Norfolk Avenue project was larger than what we had originally anticipated, so we'll have to use a little bit of CHAF money to help make up that difference. So there'll be about $30,000 plus or minus that we'll take from CHAF to finalize this, to do the Norfolk Avenue piece.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Good questions, Council. Any other comments or? Okay, thanks, Gary. With that, I need to back up because I failed. I would ask for consideration of approval to accept a low bid.
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. We had great discussion. Any further? All right, then I'll ask that you please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay. I have one other item here that I have been asked to share. and that is a message from Mr. Carl Forsell, who is responsible for the great youth council group that we have here in the city of Norfolk. And that group on Saturday, April 19th, the Norfolk Youth Leadership Council completed a spring cleanup project by picking up enough trash to fill 1 dumpster, 3 trash cans, 5 large garbage bags, and 1 pickup truck loaded from the field next to Walmart and the north part of Big Red Restaurant and Sports Bar. So with that, he would like to thank the following for their donations toward this project: Aaron's Rental for allowing us to place a dumpster on their property, Hy-Vee West for water and donuts, Walmart Supercenter for gloves and juice, Waste Connections for the dumpster and transport, Big Red Restaurant and Sports Bar for lunch, and City of Norfolk for waiving transfer station fees. All this made for a very successful effort there. So we want to say thank you to City Councilman Dale Coy and Councilman Josh Moaning for pitching in and getting their hands dirty side by side with the Norfolk Youth Leadership members. We also want to thank, we would also like to thank for helping pull this together, those 2 councils. So thank you for your efforts. And again, this is from, he says, I'm sorry if I continue reading, as the sponsor, I deeply appreciate the positive relationship that the Norfolk Youth Council and the City of Norfolk have shared, and appreciate not only time put into this project, but also appreciate that Councilman Coy and Councilman Moaning pitched in and got their hands dirty side by side. Thank you to the City of Norfolk. So, that being said, congratulations to you 2 for taking responsibility for being there for us as far as this council, and as well any of you city folks that might have been out there as well.
I just wanted to add, I had a correspondence from Brett Davis from Waste Connections, and it was over 2.2 tons of trash from that area. So.
Really?
Yeah. And we probably could have picked up for another 4 hours. So.
Are you asking to go back on Saturday? Okay.
I don't think I'll go back for a while.
Thanks, Councilman. Anything else for the good of? If not, we're adjourned. There's cake to be shared